Hey, welcome back to the Big Ranch Show. Thank you for joining me. Now, I really got to ask the question to all my Democratic friends out there, all the people that are Democratic voters going into the primaries, and those of you especially that are saying that, oh, Bernie Sanders isn't really a Democrat. He can't be running, he can't be the nominee for the Democratic Party. He's not really a Democrat. But on the flip side, those same people are saying that it's okay for Mike Bloomberg to run as a Democrat. A man who from 2001 to 2009 was a Republican, who didn't decide he wasn't a Republican anymore until he realized he wouldn't win an election. So he switched. Still holding on to the same values that he ran on as a Republican. Why is it okay for him to run, but not Bernie Sanders? And why would you even give your vote to a chameleon like Mike Bloomberg? Think about it. Bernie Sanders has been the same person his entire time in Congress. He hasn't had to evolve on any issue. He's been on the right side of history on almost every single issue. Gay rights, right side of history. You know? Helping the poor, the right side of history. His views are supported by a majority of Americans. Much like Barack Obama, if you were to take Bernie Sanders' name off of any piece of legislation that he has helped write, or any of the policy ideas he has, almost 80 to 85% of Americans would support them. Most Americans support some form of Medicare for all. Most do. That's a fact. He supported marijuana legalization before it was cool to do so. He's been a supporter of the LGBTQ community for his entire time in Congress. As far back as the 80s, taking a fellow House representative to task for their views, their anti-LGBTQ views. As late as back in the 80s, folks. Bernie Sanders isn't the chameleon that Mike Bloomberg is. Bernie Sanders isn't trying to fool anybody. He just knows that he has to run as one party or the other. You have to either be a Republican or a Democrat. It's a two-party system. We don't have room for a third party. People are like, well, that's not true. Yes, it is true. A third party cannot win a general election in this country for the presidency of the United States. It can't be done. There's just no way it can happen. The best chance of that was Gary Johnson back in 2016. And where do you get? Like 1.5% of the vote? Yeah, that's going to get you somewhere. 1.5% of the vote and not one electoral college vote? Yeah. So no, Bernie Sanders can't run as a third-party candidate and be successful. The fact is, he supports a lot of things that most Americans support. Maybe Americans may not support the way he wants to do some things, but he has a huge following of people who will help get him elected in November. Mike Bloomberg, on the other hand, is a chameleon. He changes with the times. Whatever he feels that he can tell you to make you feel better about voting for him, he'll tell you. Like the other day, he tried to basically wash away the stain of the stop and frisk policy he put in place in New York City. A policy that overwhelmingly targeted African American and Hispanic Americans in the city. Overwhelmingly, it targeted them. And now he's trying to tell you, well, he didn't support the targeting. Sir, you instituted the law. You instituted the city ordinance allowing this to happen. And the whole point of it was to help keep African American and Hispanic people in check. Because you feel, as you said, that African Americans and Hispanic people cause all the crime. So they all deserve to be stopped and frisked. Because supposedly they commit all the crime in the city. That's what you said, I believe, in 2004. Could have been 2005, 6. But somewhere between 2004 and 2006, that's exactly what you said. Mr. Bloomberg sat there and said that minorities are the cause of all the crime. Therefore, it is okay. He tried to wash that away last week with a press conference. I'm not buying it. Another thing about Mike Bloomberg that you may not know is he hates the poor. And this isn't hyperbole. This is fact. The man has said that he will tax the poor into eating healthy. It was part of his Big Gulp initiative. It's part of the reason he wanted to get rid of the Big Gulp in New York City. Because he didn't think poor people could make the decision to be healthy. And trust me, if poor people had the money, they would choose to be healthy. The fact is, if you're poor, you don't get enough on food stamps to buy healthy foods. You get enough to buy maybe one fresh vegetable for the month. And the rest of it, if you want to be able to eat, has to be prefab stuff. Or sandwiches and, bread and bologna. One, bologna, it's high in sodium. Not good for you. And bread is high in carbs. Not good for you. Both make you gain weight. Both lead to things like diabetes, hypertension. And ultimately, it creates a bigger drag on the overall economy. So maybe, instead of blaming the poor, maybe you could actually help the poor, Mr. Bloomberg. But you wouldn't know how to do that. You've been rich basically your entire life, haven't you? You're no different than Trump. You're exactly Trump light. And I say light only because you know how to speak political ease. Like a friend of mine said the other day, Mike Bloomberg knows how to speak politician. Mike Bloomberg is not good for the Democratic Party. He is not good for America. And one last thing about Mike Bloomberg. He supports redlining. Now, I was in a group the other day on Facebook, a person saying, no, he doesn't support that anymore. As recently as 2008, he supported redlining. Now, I know that's about 12 years ago now. And maybe he has evolved on that. I don't buy it. Maybe he evolved because it's politically expedient to him. Much like Hillary Clinton evolved on gay marriage because it was politically expedient. Maybe I just don't want to believe that a racist is going to change his hat. Now, why do I think he's a racist? Well, one, there was the stop and frisk policy. And then, as I just mentioned, redlining. He supported redlining. Now, if you don't know what redlining was, it was a situation that ran all the way, I believe, almost into the 80s, where people that were of African American descent, Hispanic descent, whatever, would not be given home loans. They would be denied, period, just out of hand, without looking at their income or anything. It was a way to keep African Americans from owning property in this country. It was literally an expansion of Jim Crow, or an extension of. It prevented hardworking minorities the right to be able to own a home. It denied them the ability to create, family wealth. And it was wrong. It was racist. All it was another way to try to keep the minorities down in this country, to make them as if they weren't as good as the rest of us. You and I both know that that is wrong. We both know that redlining and stop and frisk were both extremely racist programs. And I don't play lightly with the race card. I don't think somebody that just makes a stupid comment is a racist. But I do believe somebody that institutes racist policies and supports past racist policies and blames the end of things like redlining for the collapse in 2007 of our economy, when we know it was the bankers that were doing the bad deeds, not the people underneath, not the people with the home loans. Unscrupulous bankers who were giving loans to people that they knew couldn't pay them back. Had nothing to do with the end of redlining. It had to do with jumbo loans being given to people who were making like $75,000 a year, maybe $100,000 a year, and letting them buy a house that was worth $1 million. So don't sit there and tell me it was the poor or the minorities that caused the crash of 2007, Mike Bloomberg. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? Do you think Mike Bloomberg should get a free pass like he's getting? And at the end of the day, why Mike Bloomberg and not Bernie Sanders? It's a good question I have. Anyways, Sanders 2020. I'll see you down the road.